What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Think Welding and More. Today we're going to do part 2 of my Prerunner's engine cage. I want to show you guys in a minute the driver's side. I already have it fit and tacked up, and I want to show you guys on the passenger side how I fit and tack up a shock hoop. After that, we will work on the strut bar and then welding it out. So let's get to it. All right, so here is my driver's side. I've already fit and tacked up everything, and wanted to show it to you guys. For those that don't know, the main reason was I wanted to add a triple bypass. It had a shock tower. I cut it out, I reworked the upper mounts, got it ready for the shock hoop, and as you can see now it's a coilover triple bypass. I'm gonna do it on the other side. I want to show you guys as much as possible, and I hope you guys enjoy it. If you have not, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up. It'd really help my channel. Thanks. Alright, so these are some of the tools that I'd use for figuring out the measurements and degrees on my bends. I'll get a little more into depth with them when we start to do it, but for a little rundown, I use tape and this degree finders or protractor to figure out the degree that I want it at, and I write it down on a paper. I take it inside to my computer. I put those measurements into Bin Tech, and it shoots out a number, and then I'm able to measure my tube from start to end to cut and put it into my tubing bender and form the tube for the shock tower or shock hoop. So let's get on the passenger side and I'll give a demonstration. Alright, so here's the passenger side. As you can see, there's some blue tape. I took the blue tape and ran it pretty much where I want my tubing. After that, I put some marks in each spot, and I can use a measuring tape to get a good measurement on how long I want it to be, and I would write that down. After I do that, I use this protractor, and you can put it in there and figure out what angle you want for your bend. That's how I get my measurements. You can do the same thing inside the cab for a roll cage. Then after I write down all those measurements, I take them inside, put them in the computer, and it gives me perfect exact measurements for where I need to start each bend for my tubing bender, my dies. You have to remember everyone's bender and die is different, so you want to do it for your particular die. Now we'll move on to bending some tube. Let's get to it. So we formed the tube. I cut it to length as the same as the first one I did. I left it a 1/2 inch long, so when I go to cut it, I'm only cutting a little bit, not the whole entire pipe, or sorry, tube. This is a Harbor Freight pipe notcher. You know, they're pretty good if you're easy on them. It's hard to do long angles, but a straight cope is fairly simple. I'm gonna use a lot of oil, go really slow, and don't push it. That way, you know, I keep the tool and drill in good condition, and I can use it over and over again for a long period of time. This one's a straight notch. The back one is like about a 1/4 inch out between the two ends. So let's get started. Notch some pipe, notch some tube. Pretty good. Get it on the truck. All right, so I tacked up the shock hoop. I'm happy with where it's at. The way I found out, or the way I was able to locate it in the same position as the one on the driver's side, is the front plate. The front plates are in the same spot, and then for the rear, I measured off the bottom of the frame to the bottom of my shock hoop. That way I know that they're pretty much identical. Now, since I'm happy with the position that it's in, I'm going to cut the tacks, pull it out, clean it up, and weld the cups. The cups are 1 3/4 DOM tubing, the same as the hoop, and I capped it off with a piece of mild steel just so it looks good. And then I'm gonna weld around everything, weld it to the frame, but that comes later when we finish our strut bar going across from side to side. Once everything's tacked up and, you know, in place and I'm happy with it, then I'll weld everything out. But for right now, I want to cut the tacks off and put it on the bench and weld these cups so I can get the back side, because after it's tacked up, you're not able to reach them, and I want everything welded and strong. So I'm gonna pull it off, and then you guys will get to see a little bit of welding, and then we'll tack it back on. All right, let's get to it. All right, so I just got the shock hoop tacked in place. I finished welding the cups so I could get the back side of them. I fit it up, tacked it in place where I feel it's a good spot. It's in the right location. I'm gonna move on to the upper and lower tabs. Copying the other side. The other side's working out, so I'm gonna try the same measurements. I have a mark from when I originally did the bend. It's 1 inch over from that, so I'm gonna go ahead and tack in the upper tabs or the upper tab for the coilover, and then we'll put the coil on it, and I'll go up and down to make sure it clears the upper control arm at full droop. So let's get started. All right, here's the tabs that I made for the upper. Pretty much drew it on a piece of paper, traced it onto some steel, cut it out, welded them all together, with like a bead on each side, ground them all the same, ground the weld off, that way they would all identically be the same. Then I made plates for the top, put a spacer in there, welded them so they're already ready for putting in its location. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, just like that. So now I'm gonna put one tack on the top side so you probably won't see me, and then we'll fit the coilover in here and tack the bottom, and then we'll cycle it with a jack it up and then lower down. So let's do it. Alright, you can see the coil is hanging by the upper tabs. I have the lower tabs installed on the shock so I can position it and tack it in place. I'll cycle it one time just to make sure it hits the bump stop before the shock bottoms out. Then I will lower back down, install the coil to make sure it clears the upper control arm at full droop. So let's get started and get her done. Barely have it tacked on there. I don't want it to break. Looks pretty good. Lower it down and put the coil on. Try and put one more tack on it so it don't break. Alright, so everything looks good. I'll go ahead and tack up the upper tabs for the triple bypass, and then same process, I'll tack that up and then put the shock in, position the bottom the same. I'm doing 5 inches center to center, 5 1/4 center to center, so we'll make sure that that's all the same, and then we'll cycle it with both shocks on there. Then once that's all done, we'll do the strut bar. So let's get to it. Alright, here's the triple bypass. It's always difficult to put these in. Now we can move on to removing the shocks. I'm gonna cut the tacks, put it on my weld table, weld the tabs out so they're solid welded all the way around. Then I'll tack it back in place and start working on the strut bar. I want to do it this way because there's a lot of areas that I can't get my head in there, and so it's going to be extremely difficult to get a good solid weld on there. So I'm going to do it this way. So let's do it. Alright, so I'm out here this morning, gonna start working on this strut bar for my engine cage. I have a level across it so I can use it to take measurements from the top of the hoop to the bottom of the level. And I have my test piece. It's a 90 degree. It's gonna go over the intake. It's probably gonna be 60 degrees from the angle that I got from the piece of tubing and the square. It was 30 degrees on that side and 30 on the other side, so it's a 60 degree bend. After I bend the tubing and fit it in, tack it, make sure it works and that I'm happy with it, I'll pull it back out, cut in these tube couplers. These are interlocking tube couplers made out of chromoly. That way if I ever want to take the strut bar out to remove the engine, I don't have to cut it apart later. It's already ready. Now that I kind of gave you guys a rundown on what I'm going to do and how I got my measurements, I'm gonna put it into the computer and then come out and bend the tubing on the tubing bender. And then once everything's tacked up, I'll start welding it out and then move on to paint and reassembling. So let's get to it. Alright, so I'm gonna attempt to do this in flip-flops today because it is blazing hot outside. I'm in Southern California. It's creeping up on summertime. It's really hot. So today is shorts and flip-flop day. So I put all the measurements into the computer. It gave me a 57 degree bend. So I'm gonna go to 57 degrees, pull it out, wipe it off, take it over, look at it, see if it looks right. I only have one piece left in case I mess this one up. So hopefully I get it right on the first shot. After I do that, I'll put some marks on it, put it in the tubing notcher, and put some notches on it. Put it in, see if it fits. If it fits, then I'll cut out for the couplings, tack those in, and then tack this strut bar in. So let's get to it. Alright, so I put it in there. As you can see, it fits pretty good. Still needs to be notched, so it might end up being a little short, but that's okay because I have those interlocking couplings. After I notch it, I can see how much on each side it's short, and I will add that to the cut piece that I take out for those interlocking couplings. And so let's get to that and get it fit in, tacked up, so we can start welding. All right, so I got my piece in here. I'm gonna notch both sides. I'm gonna do another test fit, see how much it's short on either side, so I can add that to the piece I'm gonna cut out about right here for this tube coupling. You know, so normally you would cut out 1 5/8. If it's an 1/8 inch short, then I'm gonna do 1 3/4. That way I get a nice snug fit for the fish mouth when I go to weld it. So let's start cutting. Typically when I do the oil, if you get it spinning not too fast, the oil will stay on there. If you have it turning too fast, it will fling off. So so I test fit it. I tack the couplings where they're going to be. I'm happy with the fitment. So I'm gonna go ahead and weld these couplings and then put it in the truck and tack it in. Once it's tacked in, I'll go ahead and weld it out. So we'll start with this and then I'll move this over to the truck, tack it in and weld out portion of it. So let's start welding. So I got the strut bar in position, ready to be tacked up. I measured it, made sure it's square from the distance of the shock tabs, that it's in center of the frame or cab. And then I also measured off the radiator just to check in different ways to make sure it's square before I tack it, mainly because if it's not square, sometimes it's really hard to, you know, cut the tacks and remove the piece. So a lot of double checks. So now that I know it's good, I'm gonna tack it and then I'll weld it out. since we have all the fab work welding finished, I'm gonna move on to masking off everything and painting everything. Once it dries, I'll reinstall everything and we'll be finished with the Prerunner engine cage and adding the triple bypass. All right, super excited. Got the wheels back on, drove it around. Really happy with the results. Can't wait to take it to the desert. If you guys like what you've seen, give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe. It's gonna help me grow my channel. I really hope you guys got something out of it. If not, at least some good entertainment. I'm gonna have videos coming up, so stick around, check it out. See you guys next time. Later.